Hey, I'm back. I've sorted out, or I believe I've sorted out my camera mounting bracket up here. There we are, about so. Good. Okay, so I've started sewing the pleats on the profound male to female alteration. And again, remember using my handy dandy pleat width chart. I know that my the width of the pleats at the widest point of the seat is 1 inch and 3/4 at the waist. Now, a couple of things, because the about the widest you've got anywhere on this tartan is just under, just a shaved inch, just a shaved bit under 1 inch. Okay, and some of these blocks are actually less than that. They're like, it looks like 7/8. In any case, yeah. So I started sewing. I've started sewing with the first pleat, and I've mounted I've located the buttonhole closer to the top of the kilt than I do with a man's kilt, because as you remember, when we're tailoring for a man, we measure to the natural waist, and then we go down, and it's typically 2.5 inches. So, and then when we're tapering from the top of the pleat, the pleat is parallel down 2.5 inches or at least to the middle of the strap, and then it's tapered to the bottom of the fell. And again, it's 2.5 inches because that's just empirical observation over 50 years and hundreds of kilts. So the male kilt, parallel, then taper. The female kilt, to fit the female form, we have there's no parallel and then taper. It's tapered from the top to the bottom, an even taper. And to that end, actually no, not to that end, I've moved the center of the strap. Again, generally it'd be about 2.5 inches. I've moved it to 2 inches. I brought it up a 1/2 inch. I can't, as yet, give you a logical analysis, a logical explanation of why I've done that. It's just an empirical sort of gut feeling, because it's got to be something like 50 years and hundreds of kilts tailored for men, I think I've tailored and altered less than 10, less than 20 for women. And but I have this gut feeling that by moving it higher, we're gonna achieve a better fit. That we're not gonna have a gap at the top where the cloth hangs loose, where the female figure continues to taper. The reason why I've only brought it up 1/2 inch is I want enough of a sewn portion of the pleat. Pardon me, I'm going to sneeze in a second. There we go. I want enough reinforcement up here. I could bring it up to within, where's my strap? I could bring it up much closer to the top. Perhaps after the first fitting, I'll find that I'll want to bring it up closer to the top. And in this distance, I think about the closest I can take it is 1.25 inches down from the top, because again, we need a bit of reinforcement here. We also have the top band to go on. So I've gone with 2 inches, and I expect that's going to work for me. The other factor that I found, again, because I'm working with dimensions, 1 inch at the hip, 3/4 at the waist, where I can't fit that full inch in some of these blocks of cloth. Now, you probably can't see it here, but this taper, I'm just going to put where the edge, this block, that my gauge to show where the edge of it is. So I've sort of made this pleat is a tiny bit narrower, but as a sort of a trompe l'oeil, I've made this pleat just a tiny bit wider so that we have, when looking at it, you're not seeing, because your eye catches stuff like this quite accurately and quite quickly. If I start monkeying with the width, if I start reducing the width of the blocks as I sew them up, the eye is going to catch that, and it's not going to be a good look. So this pleat, I can't quite achieve a full inch because of the colors. So this one's slightly under, but in consequence, I've made this one slightly over so that it's sort of a true trompe l'oeil. Same thing we're going to have here. This next block of color is my full inch. If I go right smack up against that black line next to the red, I'm going to have a bit of a problem when it comes to pressing, because that red is going to want to peek out, and it's not going to look, it's going to look a bit unprofessional. So I'm going to bring it over so I've got just the width of the chalk into the blue, just to give myself that tiny little, what's that, a 1/16 of an inch overlap. But that also means that I'm going to be extending slightly into the black on this side, aren't I? So on this side, okay, same thing here, my 3/4 of an inch, I'm just inside the blue. So when I pin this, now again, remember when I pin this for a male, I would pin it like that and like that to achieve the parallel, and then I'd come down and pin at the bottom to achieve, let's just do that, to achieve that taper from there to there. But we don't want that taper, do we? Or we don't want that parallel. So now if I pin this, if I sew this so that it's an inch, remember we're making this a little bit wider anyway, because that one's actually wrong. That one's absolutely bang on 1 inch. But this one, if I go to an inch, I'm going to be going into the black, and then we would have a strip of the black, which would then vanish into the pleat, and we absolutely do not want that. I don't know who came up with that rule, but I treat it as absolute. So what I'm going to do is, this pleat is going to be about 1 1/8, between 1 1/8 to 1 1/4, which would be 3/16. Just enough. Again, if I'm bang on the line, we're going to see that black too easily. So I'm going to make this just a little bit wider so that it can cover that black. Now I'm here. I'm down to about 7/8, and I'm like 1 1/8 there. So the net effect is what we want. Okay, so pinned, and I give it a tug, which encourages the cloth to fall in a straight line between the two. You can see I'm moving. There's that black transformation to black right there. I'm moving over just a hair so that I don't run the risk of it showing when I sew that line. Okay, good. So far so good. So I'm going to sew this up. Yeah, we're just going to keep motoring along, because as you can see, I've got my base to show where the center of each pleat is, and once I've pinned it up, I pull it out, and I think by the end of it, by the time I finish these 25 pleats, I'll probably not even need those base, because I'll have that original quilt maker's plan in my head, and I'll be able to act on it. And again, we can see the tremendous amount of fading there. So far, it hasn't really shown on the finished work, and therefore I haven't had to start thinking of a marketing solution to a quality control issue. Anyhow, there we are. So I was lucky I was able to find the right color of green thread. And I'd call it olive drab, or not quite khaki, but olive drab, the same color that we used to wear with our field uniforms. Gotta say, I don't like the modern habit of wearing camouflage, the camouflage cloth, the cad pad. I was part of the trials during the late 70s, early 80s at Gagetown. They would issue us this camouflage uniform, and we all had different ones. And you'd wear them for the training cycle, and then you'd report in about what you considered the strengths and weaknesses. And to my knowledge, every trial of the new camouflage, and I had, it's since turned it in, of course, but there'd be people wearing Splinter Cam, Tiger Cam, British DPM, all sorts of stuff. And the reply on every one of these was, no, olive drab is better, because it would pick up the color of the countryside, you know, the dominant color, the color of the topsoil, I suppose. But they kept rejecting these findings because I think there was some twit sitting at a desk somewhere who desperately wanted to wear a camouflage uniform. So again, every trial overturned or rejected the camouflage and found plain olive drab to be better. But again, they overwhelmed that. I think the reason why I told this story is because as often as not, when I have thread, the lesson is as true now as it was then. When I have thread in about that color, and I can't show it to you because it's on the spindle over my head. But as often as not, the olive drab color seems to be far and away better at hiding against contrasting colors than if I found a color to match it. So, okay. That was a clear case of me just sort of havening, talking for the sake of hearing my own voice, I suppose. And I'm sewing again. I'm sewing about 10 stitches per inch. It's 3:45. Let's see if I can get this half done by quitting time. Did I just miss a stitch? It looks okay. Pardon me. Okay, pardon me. There's that one done. There it is again. I got to sharpen these chalks again. It's going to be ever a little bit more narrow. This one, well, that's nice because if I center it, because it centers the center of the blue line between the two black lines, that's the center of the piece. In fact, I'm going to get this yarn out before it distracts me. Right? So there's a full inch. That's still a little shy, so I think what I'm going to do is, where's the dull side of my chalk? There's the dull side, so show you in a second. Now these are all at 2.5 inches. I just have to remember that I'm not running that parallel section. Width is good, width is good, there we go. Now, see, we don't quite have the width there, do we, because of that element right there. We just barely do. So I'm gonna, once again, this pleat is a little bit narrower to hide that, and the corresponding pleat is just a touch wider. And this works as long as you don't, if you remember not to compound the error, because if you go, you know, wider, 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 then after a while it's out of hand. I gotta roll that under just a bit because of that black. Okay, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so far, touch wood, no hiccups. We've seen we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 evenly spaced pleats, and then a pleat which is just about even with the one next to it. And then this one is a very deep pleat. So we're going to see the same pleating effect from the inside of the kilt that we did on the original. So that tells me I'm on the right track. Okay, enough of this. I'm going to turn the camera off and turn some music on to make me more productive. And I'll check in with you later.